The knock at the cave. Snow whispered across the high cliffs, carried by a wind so cold it could turn a man's breath to ice. Far above the forested valleys, in a cavern carved into the side of Mount Dravux, a dragon sat in silence. Vaelthar had lived here for centuries. Alone, his claws had dug the shells where scrolls now rested in careful order. His teeth had split the stones for his hearth. His own magic kept the bitter wind out and the shadows still. No visitors, no noise, no demands. Just the hiss of the fire and the crackle of logs. That night was no different, until the sound came. Not the howl of the wind or the distant rumble of shifting ice. A knock. Vaelthar froze, his slit-pupiled eyes narrowing. The sound was faint, 3 short raps against the enchanted stone that sealed his entrance from the world. For a heartbeat, he wondered if it was his imagination. But then it came again. The dragon rose, his massive bulk moving with deceptive quiet. With a wave of one claw, the protective barrier shimmered like water, revealing the storm beyond. What he saw made him hesitate. A woman stood there, half collapsed against the rock, her clothing torn and soaked through. Dark bruises marred her face and arms. In her arms, she clutched a small boy no older than 5, wrapped in a threadbare cloak. The child's eyes were wide, but not with fear of him, more like fear of everything else. The woman's lips moved, and he barely caught the words over the wind. "Please, help us." Vaelthar's first instinct was to close the barrier. Humans had hunted dragons in living memory, and though their numbers had dwindled, he had no reason to trust any of them. But then the boy looked up at him, big brown eyes, trembling, yet steady on the enormous creature before him. "Are you a good dragon?" The question hung in the frozen air. Vaelthar almost laughed, not from amusement, but from the absurdity of it. A good dragon? What did that even mean anymore? "You should not be here," he rumbled. His voice was deep, resonant, and edged with warning. "The mountains are no place for your kind." The woman swayed, clutching the boy tighter. "We had nowhere else to go. Please, just for tonight." The wind howled again, and Vaelthar caught the scent of something on her. Burned wood, steel, and blood. Fresh wounds. Fresh danger. He could turn them away. Let the storm claim them. It would be the simplest choice and the most rational. Instead, with a slow exhale, he lowered the barrier. The invisible wall parted like mist, and the bitter wind rushed in. The woman staggered forward, half carrying, half dragging the boy. Vaelthar stepped aside, his tail curling protectively around the fire pit. "Do not touch anything," he warned. The child craned his neck to take in the cavern. Vaulted stone ceilings, shelves lined with strange artifacts, gold coins glimmering faintly in the shadows. Instead of shrinking back, he smiled faintly. "It's warm." The woman sank to her knees near the fire. Her hands shook as she tried to loosen the boy's cloak. Beneath it, Vaelthar saw more bruises, some deep enough to swell the skin. "Who did this?" he asked, more to himself than to her. She hesitated. "The king's men. Enforcers. She cut herself off, glancing at the boy. "We can explain in the morning." Vaelthar grunted, retrieving a clay bowl from a nearby shelf. He filled it with hot water conjured from the air and set it beside her. "Clean your wounds. Then rest. I will decide what to do with you at dawn." The woman nodded gratefully, though he saw her eyes flick toward the cave entrance as if expecting pursuit. The boy, meanwhile, edged closer to Vaelthar, unafraid. "Do you live here all alone?" "Yes. Don't you get lonely?" Vaelthar blinked. No one had asked him that in 100 years. "No," he said finally. "Solitude is simpler." The boy seemed to think about that, then gave a small shrug. "I think having someone with you is better." Vaelthar said nothing, but as the child curled up beside his mother, and the snow thickened outside, the old dragon found his gaze returning to them again and again. Perhaps it was only curiosity, or perhaps, though he would never admit it, the warmth in his cave felt different tonight, like the storm had brought something more than wind and snow, shelter and shadows. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the mountains silent under a thick blanket of snow. Sunlight poured into the cavern's mouth, making the icicles along the stone edges glow like crystal teeth. Vaelthar had been awake for hours, watching. The woman stayed first, sitting up slowly against the wall where he had given her blankets. The boy, Lorien, as she'd murmured his name in her sleep, was still curled against her side. "You're still here," Vaelthar said, his deep voice rumbling through the cavern. She blinked at him, her eyes still shadowed from exhaustion. "You didn't throw us out." "I said I would decide at dawn," he replied. "It is dawn. I am reconsidering." Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. Instead, she began tending to the boy, checking his small hands for frostbite. Vaelthar watched the way she moved, protective, careful, not as servant's care, nor as soldier's efficiency. Something else. When the child finally woke, it was with a sleepy smile that somehow carried no fear of the dragon towering nearby. "Morning," Lorien said, rubbing his eyes. "Do dragons eat breakfast?" Vaelthar blinked. "Sometimes. Can we?" The woman stifled a tired laugh. "We can if the dragon allows it." Vaelthar turned away, pretending to be unmoved. He retrieved strips of smoked venison from a stone jar, along with dried berries and a clay jug of melted snow water. The boy's eyes widened as he accepted the food. They ate in silence for a time, save for the crackling of the hearth fire. But Vaelthar's senses were never idle. His hearing extended far down the slopes, beyond the snow-choked pines. Somewhere, faint but distinct, he heard the unnatural clink of steel and the muffled thump of boots in snow. He frowned. "You're being hunted," he said at last. The woman froze, a piece of meat halfway to her lips. "I told you." "You told me nothing," he interrupted. "You said king's men. That could mean anything. Why would they pursue you here, through a storm, into a dragon's mountains?" For a moment, her shoulders sagged. Then she met his gaze. "Because I didn't obey." "Explain." "I was a healer in the royal court," she began quietly. "I tended to soldiers, servants, even the king himself. But the king's cruelty grew. Prisoners came to me with wounds from his punishments, wounds meant to kill slowly. One day, I refused to treat a man he wanted kept alive for torture." Her eyes flicked toward Lorien. "I took the boy that same night. His parents were executed for defying a royal tax. I couldn't leave him." Vaelthar said nothing for a long while. His tail scraped across the stone floor, slow and thoughtful. "So you stole from the king, not gold, but a life. To him, that is theft all the same." "I know," she said simply. The boy's voice piped up, innocent and unknowing of the full truth. "Elara says good people help others, even when it's hard." Vaelthar's eyes lingered on the child. Many have died thinking the same. They might have spoken more, but the sound outside had grown closer. Boots, armor, at least half a dozen heartbeats in the snow. Vaelthar's nostrils flared, catching the metallic tang of weapon oil and something fouler, tracking magic. He rose to his full height, towering above them. "They have found you." Elara's face went pale. "Already?" "They must have a mage," he said. "Your trail is cloaked by the storm, but your scent is not." Lorien clutched her arm, his small eyes darting between her and the dragon. "What do we do?" Vaelthar's instincts urged him to send them away immediately, before the hunters reached his door. This was not his fight. His peace was hard-won and easily lost. But when the boy looked at him, truly looked, with that same fearless curiosity from last night, something in Vaelthar shifted again. He remembered another time, long ago, when he had protected a hatchling not his own, and lost it to human swords. He lowered his head until his golden eyes were level with the boy's. "We do not run. Not yet." Then he turned to Elara. "If you stay, they will come for you, hey. If you leave, the mountains will claim you before the king's men do. I will give you shelter. But know this, protection comes at a price." Her chin lifted slightly. "Name it." "I have not decided yet," he said. Outside, the sound of boots faded for now, moving further down the slope. But the dragon knew they would be back. And next time, they would not knock. Fire against the storm. The mountain night had fallen thick and black, the stars swallowed by cloud. In the deep hours, when the fire's glow was the only warmth in the cavern, Vaelthar's ears caught the faint tremor of snow shifting under booted feet. He rose soundlessly from his resting place. The sound was closer this time, more of them, moving deliberately, their pace unhurried. Hunters who knew their prey had nowhere left to run. "Ilara," he murmured, his voice a low growl that stirred the embers. She was already awake, clutching Lorien close. The boy's eyes were wide, his small body rigid. "They found us, haven't they?" she whispered. "Yes." He moved to the cave mouth, brushing aside the illusion he had woven earlier. Through the magic, the slope below was painted in his mind, 8 figures advancing in a staggered formation. Steel armor glinted faintly under pale lantern light. At the center was a tall man in dark furs, carrying a spear tipped with silver. Beside him, a robed figure's hands glowed with threads of magic. The mage, unraveling the last of Vaelthar's concealment. "They will not be stopped by warnings," Vaelthar said. "They came to kill or take you." Ilara swallowed hard. "Then we can't let them in." The child's small voice broke the tension. "Will you protect us?" Vaelthar met his gaze for the briefest moment. "Yes." The first arrow struck the illusion, shattering it in a spray of light. Snow-laden wind blasted into the cave. Vaelthar's chest expanded, and the fire in his throat kindled hot and fierce. The first 2 hunters stepped into range, crossbows leveled. Their bolts never flew. Vaelthar surged from the cave like a living avalanche, his roar shaking the mountainside. Fire spilled from his jaws in a wide arc, engulfing the snow around the lead attackers. Shouts rang through the night, orders barked, steel drawn. The mage threw up a shield of shimmering light, halting the fire's reach, but Vaelthar was already among them. His claws swept through armor and bone, scattering men like dry leaves in a gale. "Ilara," he bellowed, "stay behind the fire." From the cave, she pulled Lorien back, pressing him into the shadows. But she didn't stay idle. Her hands glowed with a healer's magic, ready to meet any wound that crossed her reach. A spear jabbed for Vaelthar's flank. He twisted, tail whipping hard enough to send its wielder tumbling into the snow. Pain flared along his shoulder where another bolt found its mark. His fire answered in kind, turning the ground into a wall of heat and ash. The mage was the true threat. His chants called chains of pure light from the air, trying to bind Vaelthar's wings. The dragon crashed through them, but they slowed him, dragged at his movements. Another spear caught his hind leg. "Hold him!" the fur-clad leader shouted. "Kill the woman and take the boy." Ilara's heart stuttered. They were here for Lorien specifically. That truth cut through her fear like glass. She moved forward, planting herself between the cave wall and the advancing hunter who had broken past the fire line. He sneered at the sight of her, slight, bruised, unarmed. "Out of the way." Her answer was a pulse of healing magic, turned sharp, like a blade. The man staggered, clutching his chest, eyes wide with shock at the burning pain searing his heart. She stepped forward and struck again, forcing him back into the firelight where Vaelthar's shadow fell over him. The dragon's jaws closed, and there was nothing left to threaten her. But Vaelthar was faltering, bleeding from 3 deep wounds, his breathing ragged. The mage spells coiled around his limbs again, forcing him down onto one knee. "Now," the leader roared. "Strike!" Before the hunters could finish their charge, Ilara dashed forward, placing herself between the mage and Vaelthar's bowed head. Her hands shot out, not to heal but to seize the magic chains. They burned her palms, but she pulled, unraveling them strand by strand until they snapped like frayed rope. Vaelthar surged up with a roar that split the night. His wings snapped wide, and his fire came in a single concentrated blast. The mage scream vanished under the roar of flame. When the smoke cleared, only drifting snow and the scent of scorched steel remained. The survivors had fled, leaving the dead where they lay. Vaelthar limped back toward the cave, his steps heavy. Ilara was there instantly, magic already flowing from her hands into his wounds. "You saved me," he said quietly. "You saved us," she answered. And in the dragon's chest, where the fire had cooled, something else burned, something he hadn't felt in centuries. A new path. The snow was still falling the next morning, soft and slow, as if the mountain itself sought to bury the night's violence. The bodies of the king's men lay where they had fallen, half covered in white. Vaelthar had left them there. He saw no reason to burn what the earth would soon take. Inside the cavern, the fire burned low, casting a golden glow across the stone walls. Vaelthar rested near it, his wounded shoulder and leg bound in clean linen. Elara had been working since dawn, her hands steady even though her own palms were raw and blistered from breaking the mage chains. "You shouldn't move yet," she said, seeing him shift his weight. "A dragon heals faster than you think," he rumbled, though his wince betrayed him. Lorien sat cross-legged on the floor, a smooth piece of stone in his hands. With a small knife borrowed from Alara's pack, he was carving a crude dragon shape into it. The boy hummed under his breath, unconcerned by the smell of blood still lingering in the air. For the first time in centuries, Vaelthar realized the cavern didn't feel empty. There were voices here now. Footsteps. The smell of baking bread. Elara had managed to make a small round loaf from their supplies, the scent mingling with the smoke. It was almost home. But Vaelthar knew the truth. "They will come again," he said quietly. Elara looked up from her work. "Then we'll be ready." He shook his head. "The king will send more than I can fight alone. And when they come, they won't stop at this mountain. Your lives will not be safe here, not while he still rules." Silence fell for a moment, broken only by the boy's careful scraping of his carving. "Then we leave," Lorien said simply. Elara's brows furrowed. "Where would we even go?" Vaelthar's gaze moved to the horizon visible through the cave mouth. Far beyond the king's reach, there are lands where his banners have never flown. Wild forests, empty plains, old dragon roosts that have not seen my kind in centuries. I know the paths. Elara hesitated. "You'd come with us." The dragon's eyes met hers, steady and unblinking. "You would not survive the journey without me." And he glanced at Lorien. "I find I am unwilling to see the boy's life end in the snow." The child grinned, oblivious to the weight of the moment. "Then it's decided." They spent the next 2 days preparing. Vaelthar's old saddlebags, relics from his wandering years, were brought out from deep in the hoard, filled with what food and supplies they could gather. Elara sewed thick cloaks from hides the dragon had stored away. Lorien collected small treasures from the cavern's shelves, most of them worthless trinkets to anyone but him. At night, they sat together by the fire. Elara told stories from her homeland, some funny, some sad. Lorien asked Vaelthar endless questions about dragons, to which the old hermit gave reluctant but honest answers. On the third morning, the sky was clear, a rare winter gift. The air was sharp but still, the snow crunching under Elara's boots as she stepped out with her pack. Lorien clambered onto Vaelthar's back without fear, settling between the two raised ridges at his shoulders. "You've carried humans before?" Elara asked, tightening the straps of her pack. "Once," Vaelthar said. "Long ago." He did not explain further. She climbed up behind the boy, her hands resting lightly on the scales at Vaelthar's neck. The warmth beneath them was steady, alive. The dragon turned his head toward the cave one last time. His hoard glimmered faintly in the shadows. Gold, relics, scrolls. The sum of his life's solitude. He left it behind. With a powerful surge, Vaelthar leapt into the air, wings beating against the cold. The wind rushed past them, the mountains shrinking below. Lorien's laughter rang out over the peaks, bright and fearless. Elara held on, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The land spread out before them, miles of untouched forest, rivers like silver threads, valleys hidden under the morning mist. Somewhere out there was safety, or perhaps there wasn't, but they would face it together. As the sun rose over the white peaks, Vaelthar felt the old weight in his chest loosen. The hermit dragon was gone. In his place was something more, a guardian, a companion, perhaps even, in time, a friend. He glanced back at the woman and child on his back and spoke over the wind. "Hold tight. The road ahead is long." And with that, they flew toward the dawn. That ties the story's arc into a found family journey, closes Vaelthar's transformation from isolation to connection, and leaves room for future adventures if you want to expand it into a series.